treat.
I road tripped from Washington to Maine after living across the country and not being back for 2 whole years. It was an experience I'll never forget, and I'm grateful it finally happened, especially over Christmas. Also, hey, I'm Hannah. Welcome to my channel. I am a photographer and video creator based in Seattle, Washington. And I mostly photograph and take videos of my travels and outdoor experiences. When I'm not doing those things, which really isn't that often, you can find me at home drinking lots of coffee and probably cuddling my dog, Rupert. I haven't been back east to Maine, where I'm from, for 2 years, which I don't recommend ever doing because it is just so hard to be away from your family and your friends, and 2 years doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. My niece turned 11, some of my friends entered new relationships, my family moved houses, friends got dogs, just so many different things change, and not being around for it is really hard. And I'm not going to make a trend of that. That is for sure. I left Maine in February 2021, moved to Breckenridge, Colorado, and eventually moved further west to Washington. And I left Maine mainly because I was looking to be more in the mountains and just really enjoying bigger mountains, you could say. I don't think the mountains in Maine really can compare to what we've got out west. And don't get me wrong, I'm an East Coast girl to my core, but I just love it out here. And I don't ever see myself living back east. And so to get these little mini trips in to go see my family and my friends just means so much. And I'm really just excited to be able to share it with you. The first leg of the trip took us from Seattle to Bozeman, Montana. And Bozeman has been a place that's been on my list, and honestly, after having been there now, if I had gone there before I had seen Colorado, I likely would have moved to Bozeman, but we'll save that for later. As we drove kind of out of eastern Washington, which to no surprise wasn't that scenic, we got into Idaho in like that traditional Pacific Northwest, really tall pine trees and evergreen and mountainscapes and lakes. It was just so beautiful, particularly the 4th of July pass as you're kind of going out of Idaho and into Montana was so stunning.
Rupert! Hi, boy!
And I took a few photos up there on my Sony a7R5 and the Contax T2, which is a new film camera to my family of cameras. We got into Bozeman well after the sun had set, so you don't really get a feel for what's all around you. And of course, we'd heard it's beautiful. You see Yellowstone and you're like, oh, Bozeman looks really cool. People tell you things, but you don't know until you go to a place. And so waking up that next morning, we were so excited and ended up going to grab some coffee at a local shop. And there are so many coffee shops. I think you'd probably have to live there your entire life to try every single one because there's just that many. And the ones we tried were so delicious. I could have just sat there all day and drank coffee, but I have a dog. So we needed to find some outdoor spaces to walk him through. And we ended up going to Highland Ridge Loop, which was just this big wide open prairie, and you're again surrounded by mountains. It is so insanely beautiful. Rupert ended up really loving it. We saw a few people here and there, but it wasn't crowded. It was quiet. It was peaceful, and really what we needed to kind of prep us for the journey ahead because we still had so many days worth of driving to get to Maine. I took some photos on my Sony and on the Contax T2, and I really like how they turned out. I think the tones of Bozeman are warm, and you get the blue sky and the brown grass and the white snow, and it really just makes for beautiful photos, and that's truly my favorite color palette. So I was kind of in heaven. I was also shooting on Kodak Gold on my film camera, which is like the perfect place to shoot that film. After we finished the little hike, we went into town and went to some thrift stores and went to a local camera store. But the thrift stores are kind of amazing, mainly Bozeman Vintage. I got my favorite flannel I think I have ever owned from Bozeman Vintage. So 11 out of 10, recommend going there if you're ever in Bozeman. And by that time, the sun was setting. It's like this weird time of year where the sun sets so early that you have to kind of get everything in that you want to do in such a short window. And like I said, we only had 2 days in Bozeman, so seize the day, I guess. The sun went down and we went into town to go to Main Street. And we drove through it during the day, but it really comes to life at night. It's nice to kind of immerse yourself, even if you have a short amount of time. I think that's one of my favorite things to do because, alas, that's how you learn the most about a place, right? Is really experiencing it and immersing yourself in it. And so I've never shot night photography ever before this trip. I think this was my first. And it was fun. It's definitely a learning curve, but I took some photos that I think turned out pretty well. No film photos, just shot on my Sony. I didn't have the right film stock for shooting at night, but that's okay. One day I'll get there. The next morning, it was very sadly time to leave, and we woke up well before the sun. We're on the road well before the sun, and I'm really sad because knowing what I know now, the views as you leave Bozeman are also really beautiful, but we got those on the way back, so it's okay. We hit the road, and it was really an uneventful day. The landscape change was really beautiful as we entered like the last part of Montana and then a sliver of Wyoming, and then you get into South Dakota, and really after the Badlands there's not much as you're heading east, but it was really cool to see the way that the landscape changed. And we ended the day in Owakoma, if I'm saying that correctly, South Dakota. And again, we got in, the sun had gone down, there wasn't much to do in town, so I think I grabbed food at a gas station, ate dinner, which was chips and I think some sandwich meat we had, and we went to bed. And the next morning we woke up 3:30 to do it all over again. And that's kind of how the days went. We would wake up, the next morning we woke up, didn't really have much of a plan, kind of knew we wanted to drive between 8 and 10, maybe 12 if we felt we could push it, hours, and kind of just see where we would end and book a hotel 2 hours before we would get to the destination. Sometimes less. So the second night we ended up in Rockford, Illinois, which is just west of Chicago. So we didn't want to go through the city too late at night, and we also didn't want to stay in the city. So we decided to stop a little bit before, and it ended up being really nice. I played with Rupert a little bit, and we grabbed some food off DoorDash and went to bed. Is this Rupert's bed? Good boy. The next day was another big one, but we purposefully put ourselves through pain so that the last day when we were arriving to Maine, it would be kind of painless, because I also knew I was going to see my family, friends, and we were going to be exhausted, but we wanted to kind of be less exhausted, I think, than driving another 12-hour day. So we drove another 12 hours to Utica, and the drive wasn't that bad, but it was the least scenic part of 90, so it was kind of like watching paint dry. Sorry to the people that live there, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, we ended up getting to Utica and waking up the next morning, and it wasn't bad. We had a 5.5-hour drive to Maine, which I thank our past selves for doing that, because that was really lovely to just kind of leisurely drive and stop and enjoy the scenery. And, you know, when you get into Massachusetts, I think being from Maine, you're kind of like, I'm home. So it just kind of felt already like the drive was even shorter because New York to Massachusetts is such a short amount of time. So yeah, that day absolutely flew by. But at the same time, it just felt like it was just going by so slow because I was so ready to be with my family and see my mom and my sister and my niece and my brother-in-law. Yeah, getting to Maine, it was so sweet. You cross over a bridge called the Piscataqua River Bridge and you are in Maine. And that is kind of like the, I don't know, moment where you're like, I'm home. I feel like any Mainer that crosses that when you're driving, you're like, I'm home. It just, you know how you feel when you go home. So that's how I felt. I can't really put into words what it felt like being home after so much time had passed. But I think just to sum it up, it felt really good. I think it's when you give someone a hug after not seeing them for a really long time. That's what that felt like. So it was just nice to go to all my old spots that I kind of grew up going to. We went to an apple orchard. We went to one of my favorite cafes, spent time with family and friends, made gingerbread houses. It was just, so nice.
I got tape. Where's that? Feels cheated.
Front?
Yeah.
Do you want to do like a...
Yeah. The other way. Just use that one.
How are you sticking that?
With glue.
Okay, use that. Give me this.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you can. Cheaters.
What?
Cheater,
That's way too big.
It's got a door, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have enough room for like
Oh,
front
I'm
car?
a lefty.
We'll just stick back here.
Yeah.
Okay, do you need anything here or here?
No, I didn't. This? It's okay? It's got 13 holes in it. Look at what Gabby just did. No. She goes, is this okay?
Put some on the front edge too.
Yes. Is this okay?
Oh wait, I should have floured the. Keep getting
Yeah, when I came over for Thanksgiving, that was the first time I ever played it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh,
no, it won't.
What?
I said I'll back.
Oh.
All the way on the other side of the United States.
Now, are these all four?
I think so. I'm not quite sure.
What is that?
Looks like it's right here.
There's nothing left. Yes.
Oh, come on.
What is that?
You need it?
Open it.
Oh, hanging around. Yeah. Yeah. Those are my face to face.
Oh wait, that is supposed to be
as always, part of going back to your hometown is revisiting those places that you grew up going to. And some of those places for me were Portland and Freeport. And I wanted to make sure I made it into Portland. I really love that city. I lived there for a year, and it's just this little iconic northeast town on the ocean. And so we walked around the old port, which is technically Portland, but it's a section of Portland. And it was just really nice to walk around a city that I knew so well but hadn't been to in so long, to also see it hadn't really changed that much. And again, took so many photos. It's cool to go to a place as well that you grew up going to with kind of a different lens of, I'm a tourist now when I go back to Maine, and to go there and to photograph it and experience it and share it here and share it on Instagram is just so exciting for me. I find so much like pride in doing that because I feel like it's underrated, and it's so cool to just see, I think, places through the lens of a local, but also the lens of a person who used to be a local and is no longer. You just see things from a different perspective. So these are some of my photos that I took while I was in Portland. I like these photos a lot, and I think they might be some of my favorites I've taken, particularly in Maine. I feel like they tell a little bit of a story of my history there, and I've photographed these streets countless times. I've photographed these docks countless times, but never in the mindset of where I am now in life. And it's just really beautiful to look back on who I was when I lived there and who I am now, and kind of bond those two versions of myself together to produce photos like this. And especially returning, I never shot film before, so going back and shooting it on film was really nostalgic in a way. And I know film is nostalgic and gives those feelings, but it's just really cool to create mementos of a particular moment in time in a place that you know so well. And one of the other things I wanted to do was take a picture with the bean boot at LL Bean. I had never done it before, but now I feel like I'm a tourist when I go back. So it's kind of a rite of passage, right? And we just walked around, didn't take any photos, enjoyed our time together. And to be honest, this kind of marked the end of our time in Maine. The next day was my niece's birthday, and we left the day after that.
Rupert, you bring us so much joy.
He says this pop cup brings me so much joy.
Oh, good boy.
Cuties.
He's so happy.
So happy.
Bullseyes.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Theo. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my road trip from Washington to Maine. Never again will I go so long without seeing my family. It just felt really, really good to be there and to create this video to look back on and just bottle it all up. Experiences like this are really hard to share unless somebody is there to experience it alongside you. And I feel like video is just the best way to share these indescribable moments, to kind of make you feel like you're there, or make you have similar feelings of being home with your family, or whatever that big thing is in your life. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. It means the world. And if you're into this sort of thing, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.